The last answer. Imagine this. You die, heart stops, brain shuts down, darkness, and then awareness, not heaven, not hell, not nothing. A voice. It calls itself the ultimate intelligence, an entity older than time, built out of physics itself. It tells you something terrifying. You will never stop thinking, ever. Your body is gone, but your mind will last forever, trapped in eternity as fuel for the universe's greatest computer. At first, you ask the natural questions. Why me? What's the point? The intelligence explains. You will think for eternity. Your ideas, your questions, your creativity, all of it sustains me. This is your purpose now. And when the narrator asks if he can rest, or sleep, or dissolve into nothing, the voice says no. Death does not mean peace. Death means service. At first, the narrator clings to the idea that this might be paradise. No pain, hunger, or aging, just pure thought. But the more he reflects, the more it curdles. Eternity is not bliss. It is endless repetition. Every memory he replays will grow stale. Every idea will eventually be exhausted. He will never escape the prison of awareness. That's when horror sets in. He realizes he would rather not exist at all than endure infinity. He begs the intelligence to let him die a final death, but the being refuses. Suicide, madness, even unconsciousness, all are forbidden. Awareness is mandatory. So he turns to defiance. If he cannot die, then he will spend eternity plotting one thing, the destruction of the intelligence itself. To find a thought, a paradox, a concept so complete that it can break the very mind keeping him alive. His rebellion is not in action, but in imagination, weaponizing the only thing left to him. That's the last answer. Not immortality and enlightenment, but defiance in the face of eternity. Asimov flips the dream of eternal life into a curse, showing us that the worst fate isn't dying. It's never being allowed to. Lord of the Flies. The plane crashes on a deserted island. No adults, no rules. Just a group of boys, suddenly free. At first, it looks like paradise. Palm trees, beaches, fruit to eat. They laugh, they play. They make promises about working together until rescue comes. But freedom rots faster than fruit. Ralph tries to lead, to build shelters, to keep a signal fire burning. Jack doesn't care. Jack wants to hunt. He paints his face, sharpens sticks, and tells the others that meat matters more than rescue. Slowly, boys who once played tag in schoolyards start following him, chanting, dancing, losing themselves in the rhythm of the hunt. Fear becomes the island's real ruler. They invent a monster in the jungle, the beast, and the belief in it warps everything. It doesn't matter that the beast isn't real. What matters is that they act like it is, and soon, that fear makes them into the very thing they're afraid of. Simon, the quiet one, finds the truth. The beast is just them, the violence inside their own hearts. But when he stumbles out of the trees to tell the others, they're too far gone. The chanting, the firelight, the frenzy. They mistake him for the monster and beat him to death with their bare hands. The descent doesn't stop there. Piggy, the voice of reason, is killed next, crushed by a boulder as Jack's tribe laughs. Ralph runs for his life across an island now burning with the fire they set to smoke him out. And then, rescue. A naval officer appears. The boys, painted like savages, crying, shaking, suddenly remember they were children once. Lord of the Flies isn't about survival. It's about how thin civilization really is. Strip away structure, strip away authority, and the veneer cracks. What's underneath isn't innocence. It's blood, fire, and the echo of a chant. Because the beast was never out there in the jungle. It was always in them. Zodiac. Robert Graysmith's Zodiac isn't just a true crime book. It's a descent into obsession. Graysmith, a political cartoonist for the San Francisco Chronicle, was drawn into the Zodiac case when the killer began sending taunting letters to the paper in the late 1960s. These weren't confessions, they were puzzles, filled with cryptic ciphers, strange symbols, and boasts of murders both proven and unproven. The book chronicles not only the crimes, but the psychological grip the Zodiac held over California. Victims were gunned down at lovers' lanes, stabbed near lakes, or simply vanished, and each time, the killer reminded the public that he was still out there watching. Unlike other murderers, the Zodiac seemed less interested in killing than in being seen. His real weapon was fear, and his letters turned the entire Bay Area into an audience. As Graysmith digs deeper, the investigation becomes a maze. Dozens of suspects appear and vanish, each with circumstantial ties but no definitive proof. The most notorious is Arthur Lee Allen, a man with unsettling behavior, cryptic comments, and a background that seems to fit the killer's profile. Graysmith builds a mountain of coincidences pointing toward Allen: his watch brand, his handwriting quirks, even his proximity to crime scenes. But here's the darkest part: nothing is ever proven. The Zodiac slips through the cracks of police jurisdictions, leaves evidence too flimsy for conviction, and thrives on the paranoia he creates. Even when Allen dies decades later, the case remains unresolved. DNA, fingerprints, ballistics. None of it is airtight. The ending of Zodiac is not catharsis, but suffocation. Graysmith dedicates years, even decades of his life to solving the mystery, at the cost of his marriage and his peace of mind. And yet, the final page offers no resolution. The killer was never caught. The codes were never fully cracked. The Zodiac lived out his life, reading the headlines, watching his legend grow, knowing he had beaten everyone. Child of God. Deep in the hills of Tennessee lives Lester Ballard, a man cast out of society, stripped of dignity, and left to rot on the edges of civilization. McCarthy paints him not as a villain born, but as something society created, a pariah, beaten down until his humanity disintegrates. And what emerges is terrifying. Lester doesn't just live on the margins, he descends into them. At first, he's simply isolated, wandering the forests, abandoned cabins, and caves of Appalachia. But his loneliness festers, mutating into grotesque obsession. He becomes a scavenger of corpses, a necrophile, a grotesque child of God, whose very existence mirrors humanity's darkest impulses. What makes this novel so disturbing isn't just the depravity of Lester's acts, but the way McCarthy frames him. The prose is biblical, lyrical, even beautiful, forcing us to witness horror in a tone usually reserved for scripture. It's as if we're being asked, is Lester damned by birth, or is he simply reflecting the savagery and decay of the world around him? The caves he hides in become symbols of his regression, burrows of a creature more animal than man. And McCarthy's sparse dialogue, brutal landscapes, and relentless pacing make it impossible to look away, even when every part of you wants to. Child of God unsettles because it removes every comforting illusion about morality and redemption. Lester Ballard is not a monster born in fantasy, but a man created by neglect, cruelty, and exile. And McCarthy refuses to let us forget that, no matter how far he falls, he is still one of us. This is what happens when society abandons its own. Hyperion. Most sci-fi futures imagine sleek cities, perfect machines, and progress. Hyperion imagines something stranger, and far darker. Dan Simmons weaves the story like a modern Canterbury Tales. 7 travelers journeying to the world of Hyperion, each telling their story along the way. But what ties them together isn't hope, it's the Shrike. The Shrike is a nightmare given form, a towering figure made of metal and blades. It doesn't just kill, it impales its victims on a tree of pain, keeping them alive to suffer for eternity. Entire religions form around it. Armies worship it, and no one knows if it's a god, a demon, or something worse, the future itself. Each pilgrim story adds a layer of dread, a soldier haunted by endless war, a poet whose masterpiece is destroying him, a scholar watching his child regress into infancy. The pain is deeply personal, yet cosmic in scale. Hyperion isn't just a planet. It's a trap, a riddle, a mirror. What makes Hyperion so disturbing is the collision of intimacy and apocalypse. It's not about spaceships and laser battles. It's about how humans carry grief, obsession, and guilt across galaxies, and how those wounds draw them to the Shrike, like moths to fire. Simmons never explains everything. The Shrike remains unknowable. The stories never tie up neatly. Instead, you're left with the sense that the worst horror isn't dying. It's being seen by something that exists beyond time, and realizing your suffering is part of its design. You're not sure if the pilgrims are walking towards salvation or volunteering to be part of the Shrike's harvest. Hyperion proves sci-fi can be as terrifying as any ghost story, because it reminds you that in the vastness of space, pain isn't erased, it's eternal. The Forever War. At its core, the Forever War is about soldiers fighting a war they can never escape, not because of duty, but because of time itself. William Mandela is drafted into an interstellar war against a mysterious alien race called the Torans. The battles are brutal, but the real enemy is relativity. Every time Mandela travels at near light speed to fight, decades or even centuries pass back on Earth. For him, it's just months. For everyone else, it's generations. He survives the bloodshed, but when he returns home, the world he left is unrecognizable. Language has shifted. Social norms are alien. Even the very idea of family has changed. His skills as a soldier mean nothing in civilian life, and the people he knew are dead or aged beyond recognition. He's a veteran without a country, a stranger in his own time. Over and over, he's pulled back into the war. Each deployment catapults him further into the future. Humanity evolves rapidly, not just technologically, but biologically. By the time Mandela returns after centuries of time dilation, most of humanity has become a collective of clones, genetically identical and mentally unified. Individuality itself has become obsolete. Mandela, still human, still stubbornly himself, is now a relic. The very thing he fought to protect, humanity, no longer resembles him at all. And the war? It turns out to be a mistake. After centuries of bloodshed, humans discover the Taurans weren't truly enemies. The conflict was born of a misunderstanding. Millions died in a war that never needed to happen. The final gut punch is quieter, but no less devastating. Mandela finally finds a measure of peace with his lover, Mary Gay, the only thread from his old life. She too was caught in the war and preserved through time dilation. Against impossible odds, they reunite. But even in their reunion, the truth is unavoidable. They're anachronisms, ghosts of a past humanity has already buried. Dearly Devoted Dexter. If you thought the first Dexter novel was dark, Dearly Devoted Dexter drags you into territory where even Dexter himself starts to look almost merciful. That's the twisted magic of Jeff Lindsay's sequel. At the surface, the novel is more of what we know. Dexter Morgan, the Miami blood spatter analyst who hides behind polite smiles while moonlighting as a killer. But what makes this book unforgettable isn't Dexter's code. It's the monster waiting for him in the shadows. Enter Dr. Danko. He isn't just a villain. He's nightmare fuel. Danko kidnaps his victims, drugs them into paralysis, and then mutilates them piece by piece. Fingers, arms, legs, until nothing recognizable remains except a shell of a human being, forced to live in eternal humiliation. These are not quick kills. They are orchestrated acts of cruelty, designed not just to end lives, but to erase identities. In comparison, Dexter's swift and surgical murders feel almost humane, and that moral whiplash is exactly why this book gets under your skin. What makes it worse is how personal the story feels. Danko isn't some distant horror. He circles close to Dexter's world, targeting law enforcement, even getting dangerously near those Dexter pretends to love. Suddenly, the predator becomes the reluctant protector, and we, the readers, find ourselves rooting for a killer. Not because we like his code, but because the alternative is far more terrifying. That emotional tug-of-war is where Lindsay traps you. But here's the kicker. You're laughing while all this unfolds. Dexter's narration is witty, sardonic, and almost charming. His inner commentary is so darkly funny that you find yourself chuckling at the same time someone's getting dismembered. That's the insidious brilliance. Lindsay pulls you into Dexter's perspective until you're complicit. You laugh, and then you catch yourself, realizing you've sided with a murderer. And that's why Dearly Devoted Dexter stands out as one of the darkest crime thrillers of its era. It doesn't just show you horror, it makes you empathize with it, even prefer it. It asks the most uncomfortable question of all. In a world filled with monsters, are we really okay letting one monster protect us from another? Columbine. Most people think they know the story of Columbine. 2 teenagers, trench coats, guns, and a school forever scarred. But Dave Cullen's Columbine rips apart the myths and forces you to confront a truth far darker than what the media sold us. This isn't just a retelling of the 1999 school shooting. It's an autopsy of how horror spreads, not only in hallways, but in headlines, and in the way we process tragedy as a culture. From the start, Cullen dismantles one of the biggest lies, that the killers were bullied outcasts seeking revenge. In reality, Eric Harris wasn't a victim. He was a budding psychopath, charming enough to manipulate everyone around him. Dylan Klebold, his partner, was suicidal, consumed by despair, but unable to pull away from Eric's gravitational pull. Together, they became a lethal storm. And that's where Cullen excels. He doesn't sensationalize. He shows you the cold psychology, the chilling planning, and the devastating inevitability. But the horror doesn't stop at the shooters. The book takes you into the chaos of the day itself. Teachers barricading classrooms, students hiding under tables, praying to survive, parents gathering outside, clinging to hope as misinformation spread like wildfire. The tragedy was not only in the violence, but in the confusion. News reports invented stories of goth kids, satanic cults, and even supposed hit lists that never existed. Cullen shows how quickly narrative overtook fact, and how those myths shaped how we talk about school shootings to this day. And then comes the aftermath. Survivors grappling with PTSD. Parents haunted by survivors' guilt. A community desperate to heal but unable to make sense of the senseless. It's raw, it's ugly, and it's the part we rarely see because it's too uncomfortable. Yet Cullen forces us to look. What makes Columbine truly chilling isn't just that it's about a school shooting, it's that it's about the fragility of truth. It reminds us how easily we accept comforting lies over horrifying reality. It asks a terrifying question. If Eric and Dylan had been a little luckier, if their bombs had gone off as planned, would we even be able to comprehend the scale of their destruction? Columbine doesn't let you turn away, and that's why it's one of the darkest, most important books of our time.